everyone. Jeremy and Roy here, back for an office hours. This is special office hours because it's Thanksgiving, which is a uniquely American holiday, American United States of American holiday. And so we're going to talk about Thanksgiving and thank some people. So first of all, I don't know if this, I was thinking about this the other day. What we celebrate as Thanksgiving can't be the actual story. As a kid, like in elementary school, it was just like we would dress up as pilgrims and Indians. Roy?
Hi, how's it
Hi,
going?
Roy.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Oh.
Thanksgiving. I was just kind of lost in thought there for a second. So Roy, what is a pilgrim? And who are the Indians that we're talking about? Because that's a very generalized term.
So the Pilgrims were a sect of Puritans who were more fanatic than the typical Puritans. Most Puritans were relatively laid back compared to the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims believed that any type of expression of joy was Satan's trap, and he was trying to bring you into sin. And so they didn't believe that they could have laughter or dance or music. And so, obviously those things are things that most people like to have around them. And they also despised color because they thought that color caused you to have the sensation of pleasure. And then that was, of course, Satan again. So they dressed in black with white trim. Think about how hard it was to have black and white clothing in the 1600s. Like the way you made black, you took a dye like blue dye and you just kept putting it on until it became so dark. Well, that's a lot of blue dye. That's very expensive. And every time you wash it, some of that blue dye washes away. And then white, of course, they didn't have Clorox. So keeping their clothing black and white was a real struggle, and as a result, it showed kind of their fanaticism and hatred of color. So the English did the proper thing, which was expel them. They kicked them out of England. And they went to the Netherlands, and shockingly, England is renowned for being kind of dreary, and people are super stoic. So that at some level, you would think that they would have gotten along with the Pilgrims. But the Dutch got along better because the Dutch are even more stoic. But at the end of the day, they weren't really excited about them either. What happened was, in 1607, Jamestown was established, obviously. And then a few years later, John Rolfe figured out a way to cure tobacco and make it commercially accessible, because up until then, it was too hard to smoke it. So even though it's a narcotic and it's addictive, people could resist the addiction because the coughing fits that it created. And Rolfe figured out a way to make it smooth enough you could smoke regularly and not cough all the time. And he, of course, explained to the English that the value of this for the Virginia colony. But the really cool thing about that was that the English had already had, by this time, about 25 years of experience with tobacco, because Sir Walter Raleigh had already brought tobacco to England, and doctors were already talking about that tobacco lowered your life expectancy, made you sick regularly, that you spent a lot of time coughing, that there was no redeeming quality to it. So when Rolfe does this, the English have choice. They can make the Virginia colony rich, or at least financially produce something that the English can sell and make money off of, and kill people with an addictive narcotic, because they already knew that's what it was. Or they could just take the ethical position and walk away. And they chose, of course, option A, which is when England created the world's first ever drug dealer empire. And so before we actually get into the Pilgrims even further, we should talk about the first ever Thanksgiving in North America. And it wasn't done by the Pilgrims. It was actually done by the Jamestown colony. And what the Jamestown colony,
Okay.
yeah, the Jamestown colony would actually invite the neighboring Native Americans over, the Powhatan, and they would use this as they would eat together, and then they would use it as an opportunity to exchange goods. So it was sort of a trading event. And according to the English, and I think the year was 1622, I didn't look this up before getting online. According to the English, the Powhatan had come in with tomahawks hidden on their bodies. And when they sat down for, it was like the 6th ever Thanksgiving or whatever it was, they pulled out their tomahawks and then massacred a huge portion of the Jamestown colony and the surrounding area. They attacked the Virginia colony. And then the English then mobilized the military force and massacred them in really large numbers and drove them off their land and pushed them back. And I want to say it was in the 90s. It must have been in the 80s. There was a University of Pennsylvania professor who decided he wanted to do the archaeology. He was in the archaeology department. He wanted to do archaeology on the massacre site. And so, right, like they were going to dig down into the 1622. The other year in my head is 1623, but I think I'm mixing that up with the Pilgrims. I think it was 1622 massacre year, and then find all the archaeological evidence of the massacre. And they did the dig, and he found evidence of two people who had what appeared to be violent deaths. They both had trauma to the head. One looked like an axe blow, and the other one looked like a club. And one was a man buried in his front yard, and the other one was a woman found in a garbage pit. And that's it. He didn't find spent bullets. He didn't find broken tomahawks, broken arrowheads. He didn't find burnt buildings. He didn't find thousands, hundreds of dead bodies. That was it. It was just these two. And, I think it's just as easy to assume that Frank was walking home after whoring around in the town, and he walked into the house, and Sally was sick of him, and she stuck an axe in his forehead, and then realizing she was going to get hanged for murdering her husband, she dug a hole in the front yard and buried him, and then walked on the ground and tapped it down. Your other option is he was murdered by an anal retentive Native American who didn't like to leave a mess and was like, dude, I just killed this guy. I need to bury him because I can't leave this. Right? Those are your options. And it seems to me more likely Sally killed him than Standing Deer was anal retentive.
It's always funny how the historical record and the archaeological record, they have some similarities, but once you actually start getting the physical material and the evidence, it tells a very different story most of the time.
The other one was a woman found in a garbage pit with blunt force trauma to her forehead. She could have been drunk one night, stumbling around, and she slipped and smacked her head on a rock. Like it doesn't need to have been a Native American who killed her. But the archaeologists who did the work went, there it is, proof that the massacre took place. And I think it's actually proof that the massacre didn't take place. I mean, it's amazing what cognitive dissonance will do to the human brain. In any case, the British clearly used this, English, I should say, because this is pre-active union. The English created this as the casus belli so they could justify clearing more land so that they could produce more tobacco. So right about that time that this is happening, there were two companies involved in Virginia, the London Company of Virginia and the Plymouth Company of Virginia. And the Plymouth Company of Virginia was out looking for people it could bring to Virginia, and it went to the Netherlands and went to the Pilgrims and went, hey, how do you guys feel about becoming tobacco farmers in the Virginia colony? And they went, yeah, anything's better than the Netherlands. And so
without knowing how to farm at all, right?
Without any knowledge of how to farm, whatsoever, they get on the Mayflower and they cross the Atlantic and they get to Massachusetts. So for the record, the English had been going to Massachusetts probably as early as the 1300s, maybe even a little bit earlier. And they had been fishing off of Cape Cod, and they had been fishing for cod off of Cape Cod. And I'm wondering if that's the etymology of the name. Anyway, so when they get to Massachusetts, the ship's captain knew this place as Cape Cod. It wasn't like this is, oh, I wonder where we are. And the reason the English knew there was cod there is the Vikings had been fishing for cod there since about the year 1000 AD. And so, the Vikings were fishing the Grand Banks, they were fishing Cape Cod. They had, of course, set up Vinland, which was in what is today Newfoundland. And the English, of course, were being attacked and raided by the Vikings, and they picked up this knowledge that there was an abundance of fish, and they began picking up the fishing when the Vikings kind of quit doing the fishing. So when the ship's captain gets to Massachusetts, he tells the Vikings, this is it, you're getting off here. And they're like, the Pilgrims, this is it, you're getting off here. And the Pilgrims will go, this is Virginia, where's Jamestown? And they goes, oh no, this is Massachusetts. We're nowhere near Virginia. And they're like, well, shouldn't you take us the rest of the way? And he's like, we're a few hundred miles north. There's no way we'll never make it. And they go, what do you mean? And he goes, we're out of alcohol. And they go, I don't understand. He goes, I brought enough alcohol to do a round trip. And my sailors have consumed all of the alcohol, and we haven't even done the first part. We haven't even gotten to Virginia. And they go, we don't understand why this matters. And he goes, you people are so hard to be around. You're so detestable. You're so vile that my sailors, if they're not inebriated, completely drunk, will kill you and throw you overboard. And I don't want to be responsible for that. So I'm stranding you here and turning the ship around and heading back to England. And that's how they ended up on Plymouth Rock, because they were sent by the Plymouth Company of Virginia.
Oh, man. So
yeah,
it's funny to think of alcohol as like, I'm thinking like ethanol, like this is a source of fuel. And it was...
This
in my
is
mind,
a source
I'm like,
of people being murdered.
Yeah. It's so funny. He's like looking at the alcohol gauge on the dash. We're getting low on this. We gotta turn around, drop you guys off right here.
Yeah,
oh, man.
She'll be murdered, and I'll get in trouble for it.
So you have these group of English settlers coming from the Netherlands who are these just cranky zealots who have their own strange ideas, wearing pure black and white, as pure as it can be, and having no idea how to farm or survive. So they're just dropped off. And then they just try and make it, huh? So the Wampanoag are the native population in this area, right? And so how do you know how do they come in contact, or how does the story evolve? So where do we get to the big meal, Roy?
Okay. So there's this I don't actually remember if he's Narragansett or if he's Wampanoag. But there's a Indian in the area whose name we're told is Squanto, but I think he had a different name, and that's somehow he ended up getting called Squanto. And Squanto walks up to them as they're starving to death. So they're on the beach, starving to death because they don't know how to grow food. Talk about bad settler colonists. Like, your goal is to massacre the native population and then replace them, and you don't even know how to grow food. And walks up to them, and he starts talking to them, and he knows English because this isn't first contact, because the English, when they would come fish for cod, would actually go ashore. So, right, like the whole Columbus story is a little off right here because the English had been going for a couple of centuries before Columbus goes. And so because the English would go ashore, they would get fresh water, they would hunt, they would trade, and they would interact with the Native Americans in the area. They spoke English, and so Squanto
but
spoke English.
these were competent English explorers, though, right? These are experienced fishermen and people who know what they're doing, right?
Yeah, they were
As
fishermen.
opposed
I don't
to-
know about competent explorers.
Sure, I mean, but they knew how to survive, to like get some fish, we need fresh water,
Yeah.
that sort of thing, rather than
Right.
these pilgrims.
Right. So Squanto was looking at them starving to death, and he's like, dude, what the hell? Why don't you grow some food? And they're like, we don't know how. So he's like an idiot. You just want to get into the TARDIS and go back and go, oh, Squanto, you can't do this. This is such a mistake. Like an idiot, he goes back to his village and he gathers some food and some seeds, and he brings the food and the seeds back and he feeds them so that they don't die. And then he shows them how to plant seeds in the ground and how to fertilize them. And he gets them farming and stabilizes these pilgrims, who now become settler colonists in the Plymouth colony, Martha's Vineyard colony, the Plymouth colony, and the Massachusetts Bay colony eventually got merged into a single colony called Massachusetts, which is the state of Massachusetts today. Commonwealth of Massachusetts today. Because Massachusetts isn't a state.
So what?
It's a commonwealth.
So what food with Squanto? You say he went and got food and seeds. So did he go and where does turkey come from? Why is turkey like the centerpiece, the pinnacle of our Thanksgiving meal? And then we have, because like, was that part of the meal? Do we have any evidence of that?
Yeah. So what happened was, I don't know if he brought them the bird that we call the turkey, but he may have, because there were wild North American turkeys living in the area, and it would have been easy to hunt them. What happens is, after they survive this, they want to commemorate the event, and they don't lose contact with Squanto. They actually continue contact with them, and he trades with them. And so what they do is they suggest that they keep repeating the meal. And so that becomes the northern version of Thanksgiving, as opposed to the southern version, which was the one that I was describing earlier. The bird that they made contact with reminded them, they thought it was the bird they called the turkey fowl. The turkey fowl we call today the guinea fowl. It's actually from Africa. It's not from the Ottoman Empire, but Europeans were buying them from the Ottoman Empire. And so people started calling them the turkey fowl because they thought they were from the Ottoman Empire. And then that just became turkey. And that's how the bird got named after our country.
So what we call turkey in America is an entirely different species of bird than what they thought it was, which wasn't even...
Yeah.
It was a guinea fowl, which doesn't
They thought
really...
it was a guinea fowl.
Okay. That's
but
confusing.
it wasn't. Yeah,
No.
But it was obviously not a guinea fowl.
I guess they sound somewhat similar. They don't look terribly similar, but they make an awful noise.
Yeah. And then the thing that most Americans eat today isn't the North American turkey, it's the South American turkey. So just to make things even weirder.
Nice.
So,
and so
yeah, I think
the repetition of this... The repetition of this meal is what kind of started the tradition. But so there's two variations. There's the North and the South Thanksgivings. Okay, but they both continued. So do you know what the relationship between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag like kind of evolved into? Because I feel like it would be so hard for these Pilgrims to actually see the Wampanoag as humans if they're already this strict with their own beliefs.
So they make contact with the Narragansett and the Wampanoags, and they trade with them. They have a relatively peaceful relationship with them. But what starts to happen is more Puritans start to come, and those Puritans set up the Massachusetts Bay colony. So those Puritans weren't the fanatics. They weren't wearing black and white. I mean, they were fanatics, but they were fanatics in a much more chill way. They were Calvinists, so they believed that Jesus indicated to everybody whether you were going to heaven or hell based on your wealth. And if you were going to hell, you were poor, and if you were going to heaven, you were rich. So that's where the idea of the Protestant work ethic comes from, is because the only way to get to heaven is to be wealthy, you as a Protestant need to work hard to make that money. And I think, one of the ironies of that is that probably a huge portion of the US population is Puritan in its thinking today. And so or Calvinist. And so in a strange way, this is actually a seed for a huge part of American culture, which is, the rich are wonderful and the poor suck and are terrible people.
Also, I don't know if other international viewers know this, but like American worth ethic is like embedded into our culture to where it is what you gain value from your not necessarily your success, but just how hard you're working at something, which I've heard it's very unusual for other countries when they hear Americans talking to each other. Like if I were to meet you for the first time, one of the first things that comes up in conversation is, what do you do for work? Which is apparently not common in other places in the world.
Yeah. I mean, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily get their identity from their job in the rest of the world.
Right.
But we definitely do. So those Puritans thought they were going to come to Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and they were going to set up a shining beacon, an example for the world, so that the world would come to see that they had Christ's message correct. And the way that would manifest then was they would create the city of Boston and they would become filthy rich, right? Because if the rich go to heaven and they're doing it right and they figured Jesus Christ out, then clearly this is the path that they need to take. And so they arrived, they set up Boston, they're making it. They're not getting filthy rich, but the city is growing. It's a productive place. It's prosperous enough. But the problem is they start getting ambitious. So they go, what is a shortcut way we can prove to everybody that we've got the message? And the answer was to convert the Native American population to their religion. So they had been talking to the Wampanoag, and the leader of them was a guy named Massasoit. And for whatever reason, they told Massasoit about Alexander the Great and his father, King Philip. And Massasoit really liked the story, like so much so that he gave his sons two names, a Native American name, and then Alexander, and then Philip. And that's how the colonists would then know the two sons were by Alexander and Philip. And they made a trade deal, and part of the deal was that the Puritans would be allowed to try to convert the Wampanoag. And Massasoit said, yeah, I'm okay with that. Go for it. So they began the process of conversion. And they would go to Native American villages, and as people were converted, they would move them to a new location, and they would build an English-style village in the new location. And they would put the Native Americans in English dress. They would teach them English skill set. They turn them into carpenters and masons and coopers. And
so this wasn't just purely religious conversion. This was assimilation into English culture entirely.
Exactly. Yeah. They were like the Borg, and you will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. So they they train them to be to have these different jobs, and they're living in English houses. They have a bakery and a mill, and right, all the stuff gets set up for them. But the clergy is a Puritan, an English Puritan, and then the people in the village are Native Americans. And the thinking that they have is once the Wampanoag become filthy rich, then everybody will realize, oh my God, even these savages, once they hear Jesus's message, the Puritan version, even these savages have prospered. This really must be the right answer. And after a few years, what they found instead was that the Wampanoag who had converted to Puritanism were alcoholics. And they were literally laying in the streets in their own vomit. And so here's a myth that Americans have.
I mean, if you've totally stripped someone of their identity and their past and their culture and their traditions and their family, and then expect them to just be great human beings and no mental health issues. I mean, but what's interesting is, so like this is common today. If you look at like Christian evangelism and the like, it is like the new type of like work, which they will never say. So like it's one of the things they like Protestants have against Catholics, is that like it's all about works, which is like the Calvinist kind of mindset. Like you don't get to heaven or to Jesus through working, even though that's all they tend to do is work. They're checking off those boxes, like let's convert, let's spread, let's get people to Jesus. And anyway, it's so interesting that happened like right off the get-go, and it's super strong in American culture today.
It's very strong. Yeah. So there's a myth that people have, and that is that the American Indian population is missing a gene, and that gene creates alcohol tolerance. So that's dumb. There's no such thing. This is just one of those dumb myths. Our species has been doing alcohol for at least 20 million years, and Homo sapiens sapiens is only 450,000 years old. So we were doing alcohol when we were monkeys. Monkeys have figured out that if you let a fruit ripen and then over ripen, you don't eat it when it's ripe. You wait till it gets rotten, you will get alcohol out of it. And they will wait till it rots, and they will go over and they will eat these fruits, and they will get into drunken brawls, and they will fall out of trees, and they have a great party. So at least 20 million years.
You can look at these videos on YouTube. They do it to this day. It is entertaining to watch.
It is. They are so human. It is bizarre. Yeah. So the Native Americans had alcohol. Every nation had a different relationship to alcohol, but most of them had a corn hash that they made. The Aztecs had 17 different versions of alcoholic beverages that they made. So this idea that somehow the Native American population didn't know alcohol is just beyond stupid. In any case, the Puritans now had a problem because the Wampanoag were prosperous. They converted them. They became alcoholics, and their villages fell apart. And so it looked...
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Did we introduce depression?
Yeah, we introduced depression to Native Americans, not alcohol.
Feel like we've like taken everything. Not taken everything, because like to some extent there was some sort of agreement, even though if it was a bad sale. But the dreary clothing, you've lost all the fun. You've lost all the color in your life. You're gonna be in a building doing this one thing because that's what we've done. So they're depressed. They're drinking. They're medicating.
They're medicating, and then of course it shows that clearly they don't have Jesus's answer. At least that's how they interpret it, right? And so what do you do in that circumstance? And the answer is really clear. You destroy the evidence.
No.
So what happened was, after Massasoit died, his son Alexander took over. I think his name was Wamsuta, but don't quote me on that. I probably totally screwed that up. We should probably look it up, actually. And I think his brother's name was Metacomet. And that one I might be right about, because my mnemonic device for it is he's above the comet, because he's a metacomet. But we should look that up too.
Wamsuta, known as Alexander.
Yeah, okay. Can you look up Metacomet too, just to make sure I'm on the right track? So what the English settlers do, is they poison Alexander and kill him. And the reason they do this is they want to trigger a war.
You're right.
And they do.
Yeah, you're right with both names.
Okay. Metacomet, also known as Philip, when he realizes the English have poisoned his brother, attacks the Puritans. And that's what they wanted. They got their war. And then, of course, the English government responds by sending in the military, and they massacre the Wampanoag. It is a disaster for them. And then they drive them off of most of their traditional, I don't know if it's most, but they drive them off a big chunk of their traditional land and take it over for their own purposes, but also in the process, they get rid of the evidence. They get rid of the fact that turning them into Puritans didn't make them rich.
So this is not a happy ending.
No. That war is called King Philip's War.
King Philip's War, yeah.
Yeah.
So that said, that all happening, which is, I guess,
by the way, that was after 50 years of peace, I should point out.
Okay.
Like this wasn't quick. It was a half century of peace.
Yeah. That's long enough to really establish a tradition, I suppose. So do you think it carried on? Do you think this idea of like a celebratory meal carried on even after this war? Because it's still here today.
Yeah.
We're celebrating it today.
It's a lot like Columbus Day. It's really a celebration of the settler colonial project. It's not a celebration of Native Americans. It's a celebration of the beginning of the genocide, because tied to both the Northern tradition and the Southern tradition are these two genocidal events. The Thanksgiving Day Massacre, which is what the English called what they claimed happened to them. But in reality, what it was is what the English did to the Powhatan. And then the King Philip's War, which was, by design, an attempt to massacre the Wampanoag.
So do you think it's this holiday still exists for the same reason that Columbus Day still exists, just for tradition's sake, or for political sake, or our own Anglo culture, American culture?
Look, every civilization needs to have stories that glue it together. And the United States has a problem because its stories are so horribly unethical. Like, what we do to the Native American population, and then what we do to the Africans that we bring over as slaves, I don't see how that's any different than what Hitler did to Poland and the Ukraine and Russia. And so I'm trying to figure out in my mind, okay, if Hitler was a bad guy, then how are we not a bad guy? And the only thing I can figure is Hitler killed white people and we killed brown and black people. And so that makes it okay for us, but it was bad for Hitler because literally 99% of Hitler's victims were white. And I guess it depends on if you count the Roma as white, but
and even then it took
98%
the world
were white.
Quite a while to do anything about it.
It took the world a while to do anything about what Hitler was doing?
Yes, I think. People. Yeah, there was a lot of anti-Semitism in Europe, as we've talked about before. So it's just kind of like, well, we'll see if it's true or not. But yes, I think in the U.S., the differences between, because like we didn't I say we, early settlers didn't see the native population and then later Africans, black slaves, as human beings. Even when we
Yeah,
said,
it's
okay, they're
true.
human beings, but they're only 3/5 of a human being. It took us
Right.
so long to consider people that didn't look like us, or the other, the them. Same thing with women. Like it's only been a little over 100 years before we're like, I guess they can say stuff. Uh, but
Right.
it is pretty
It's
wild.
true.
Also, like in the United States and America in general, like we don't have much of a history, and so our stories don't stretch back. So we don't have a balance between like all of the really epic and good things to go against the really horrific things. I mean, like I guess we use George Washington and like the American Revolution and different like impossible battles that like we've gained our freedom and our liberty. We hold on to that so tightly here because we don't want to look at all of the dark things.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. There's a fantastic SNL skit where Washington's talking to a group of men, and one of them's black, and he asks Washington, "What'll happen to black people after the revolution?" And Washington ignores him and just keeps going on.
Oh man.
And we will have a mile, and it will be 5,280 feet. So I think one of the reasons we've held on to the Thanksgiving story is it's part of an attempt to create a mythical system, like to explain, establish our founding, and then it's also a great opportunity to bring that uncle that nobody likes to be around and have him say really horrible, atrocious things and shock everybody, and then hate him for the next year until you see him again, and then you can have it reinforced. And so I think there was that aspect of it. It's a sort of an excuse to overeat and overdrink, and then of course we added football to it, and so it's perfect.
Yeah. So
You can watch till
over the past 100 years, how has it evolved into what it is like today? Because it's all about like we get together, we eat too much. Football is playing like whatever the special Thanksgiving Day game is, American football,
it
and
it
then
really really
Black Friday. So now it's like it's turned into
yeah.
this big the marker of a big beginning of like the shopping extravaganza.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if this happened frequently as a kid. It maybe only happened once, but I feel like, and maybe I'm even hallucinating. Maybe it never happened. I feel like the Thanksgiving football game was the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington Redskins. I know I'm probably wrong, but it seems like that was right. Um, when I was a kid, we did the pageants. I mean, I know that they probably still do this, where they would have the Thanksgiving Day pageant where the kids would play Pilgrims and they would play American Indians, and we were lined up, and the darkest kids became American Indians, and the lightest kids became
No,
Pilgrims. Yeah,
Roy,
yeah,
no.
yeah. That's what we did. At least 1 year, I remember that happening. I don't think I remember doing it 1 year. I think that was the only time. And then I remember I was absent because I got pleurisy, so I missed a lot of the rehearsals. So I got demoted because I was actually a pilgrim, and I got demoted from a pilgrim that had a speaking line to a pilgrim who was just chopping trees. And I was so bitter because all I did the whole time was.
I think I mean we did the same thing. They didn't not that I remember arrange us into, the darker the kid. Although it was probably just us white kids. I went to a school called Whiteside Elementary, so I don't know if that's
Nice.
no, yeah.
The rival school was Blackside Elementary.
I have to look and see if that seems too on the nose. Oh boy. But yeah, we would definitely make, our pilgrim, like construction paper hats with the little buckle and stuff. And then we'd make our little headdresses to be the Indians. And I don't know if we sang or we just like told the story of, oh no, we don't have any food. Oh, you have some food?
Yeah.
And it was like this
Yeah.
joyous thing.
Hi, I'm Squanto.
I don't think we use any like, I'm a pilgrim, I'm an Indian. I don't, yeah, it's so long ago.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, those things. So this is all education for children, right? That stuff sticks with us forever.
Yeah.
And
That's
and
the
until
goal.
someone says, hey, that's not what
It's
happened.
not as good as you think.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
We have so many things in our brain that we just don't know about, that are just stuck with us until it contradicts something else, and we have to confront it and critically analyze it and go, oh man, I've been believing that for my entire life. There's a comedian whose dad told him that, he's like, did you know Tommy Lee Jones is gay? And he goes, and he told everyone that for 10 years until someone said, no, he's not. And they're like, yeah, he is. And he's like, I've known him my entire life. Tommy Lee Jones is not gay. I know his family, his like everything. Who told you he's gay? And he's like, my dad did. It's like, this is so like the things that we just pick up on as kids. That's just like, this is not. Oh boy. So yeah, it's interesting
true.
yeah. What's fascinating to me about Thanksgiving is that even though it has this rough history that is obviously one-sided in how we represent it today, it's still this kind of idea of being grateful, of gratitude, being thankful for things in our life. And I'm sure that's possibly one-sided, but that's a positive thing, right?
Yeah.
So even
We
with
should be grateful. The
so
greatest country ever stolen.
So like, how do you think that idea of like of gratitude and gratefulness has become like the idea of this holiday? Do you think that's just something that we tried to put a positive spin on, or is it an actual good thing, or should we be more realistic with it?
I mean, the question of questions is, I guess this is the question of questions. How do we reconcile our past? How do we make this moment here now somehow make sense and be okay with it? Because right, it's not like the Native Americans have been exterminated. There's still a huge American Indian population. There were, 1.3, 1.4% of the United States, according to the last census. And their population as a percentage of the country is growing, not shrinking. So there's numerical rebound. And then, the majority of the Central American and Mexican population that moves to the United States is also Native American, which is probably the main reason why there's so much anti-brown hatred that gets heaped on Mexican and Central Americans coming into the United States, because it's like, in a way, they're almost unconquering us, right? The Hispanic population in the United States is 19%, and probably genetically speaking, 80% of that is Native American. And so, it's like, if you add that 15-16% from the Hispanic population plus the 1.4, all of a sudden there's 17% of the United States is actually from North or South America and isn't settler colonial. And then throw in the 13.5% that's black. And, that's almost a third of the United States that's either not immigrant or settler colonial. So I at some level, I think we're stuck. And that's one of the reasons why we've seen the rise of the right in the United States, is there's a percentage of the population that just doesn't want to deal with the fact that their great-grandparents were just freaking evil. There's no two ways to put it, right? And you might not be evil, but that doesn't mean your great grandparents didn't do something really freaking nasty. Like, imagine Hitler had won World War II and you grew up in what used to be Ukraine, but now has been turned into a German colony and probably renamed. And the native Ukrainian population was turned into basically a slave population that's farming. And you realize, oh my God, all the wealth I've inherited, all the privilege I've inherited, all the benefits, the land I live on was procured through genocide. How do you reconcile that in your mind? How do you make that make sense? And a good portion of the population is going to go flying to the right because the right offers such a simplistic view of the world, such a like we had God on our side. We were doing the right thing. We were making the land useful. The Native Americans didn't, they fought each other too. We were just another group of people who showed up, as opposed to really seeing what happened, which was we were a white horde in the same way the Mongols were a horde. We overwhelmed the place numerically and with military power, and we trampled them under, just like the Mongols did to the Middle East and Russia. And we don't see it that way. We see it as this sort of heroic, like, oh, it was us against the frontier. And what do you mean us against the front? What is the frontier? Well, the frontier was the American population. We've couched it as if it was us against trees and us against mountains. And, we were taming a land because it was this wild land. It was so unwild that not far from where the Wampanoag was the Iroquois Confederacy. And the Iroquois Confederacy was a democracy. It had 6 nations as members. One of them joined because of as the English were genociding, they came, and there was 5 nations originally, and they added the Tuscarora because they needed help. And they literally carved out a chunk of land and they said, here, this will be for you. And the Tuscarora then got integrated into the Iroquois Confederacy. They had a constitution. They weren't just a democracy, they had a constitution. They had 2 houses. They had 2 legislatures. The lower house was made up strictly of women, and they came from the clans as opposed to the nations, because there were 6 nations, and I think I don't remember how many clans. I don't want to guess. And the women legislature made all the domestic decisions. So the economic decisions, the decisions on where people should live and how they should live, those types of choices were made by that legislature. And then that legislature voted for the Senate, or their equivalent of the Senate. And it was made of 50 members, and they were all men. And the men were in charge of international relations. And the way the Iroquois saw it was the men should be, because they're the ones who are going to go off to war and fight. So if the international relations fall apart, they're the ones who are going to pay the price. So they need to be in charge of it. And they had this elegant system that was anything but savage. It was this brilliant, and they were in many ways the most developed of the Native American populations in that area. But all of them were these elegant civilizations. They were civilizations. They had laws, they had farming. And one of the great twists in the United States that Americans tell themselves is, one of the reasons it was okay to do this is the Native Americans didn't know how to farm, so they didn't know how to use the land. And so we came and we taught them farming, and we turned the land into, and you're like, dude, you can hold the Pilgrim story and the fact that Native Americans farm in your head at the same time, and it makes sense. You've never noticed that the two contradict each other? Like, doublethink has been with us for centuries.
What's interesting is one of the tenets of like Calvinism is the principles of their farming is to completely like wreck the land. Like they believe that you, like in Genesis, we're like, this is misconstrued, but like you're just to strip the land of all of its value, and including farming. which is like, that's how you ruin soil. That's how you lose crop rotation. Like you can't grow food in land like that, which you see a lot in the South to this day, where it's just like fields of dust, or there's a canyon in Georgia that's not supposed to be there, but it's just erosion from poorly farmed fields over generations.
Wow.
But it's so the idea that they knew how to farm better is it's so interesting. But yes, like holding one idea and the other which contradict each other. It's just like while you're talking, like the idea of privilege is completely counter to the idea of work for value. So like the Pilgrims were like that we have to work and do all these things and become wealthy and convert, which is the opposite of privilege. So I think like that has evolved in American culture to where privilege is, it in a weird way reduces our value because we haven't worked for it. And that's really hard for so many people to come to terms with, instead of just being like, one, grateful, which is, Thanksgiving, like, I'm grateful. Like, it's okay to have privilege as long as you acknowledge it and understand its possible consequences. And then maybe once you know about something, you can do something about it. So to have privilege means maybe you can make amends for past generations, or just come to terms with it yourself that, hey, my ancestors weren't so great.
Yeah.
When my ancestors came from Scotland, they were criminals. They were tax evaders. So that's not the worst kind of criminal in terms of, going against the English king at the time. But it's, we all have rough patches in our past, but we should want to be, you've talked about this before. It's a miracle that any of us exist. That
it totally
us specifically, if you go and look at, so many things could happen in our lives that we shouldn't be here.
No.
It's ridiculous. So I think that in of itself is a privilege. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, full disclosure, my earliest ancestors in the United States came over in the 1890s from the Russian Empire. They were Swedes from Finland, but Russian Empire owned Finland at that time. And they crossed the prairie on prairie schooner. They were one of the last families to do so. And they went to Wyoming. They were settler colonists going to Wyoming. And then subsequent to that, my great grandfather came over as an immigrant and ended up in Michigan. And then my mother is an immigrant. So, I have a settler colonial ancestor, and then I have immigrant ancestors after that. But, at the end of the day, even if you're an immigrant and not a settler colonialist, settler colonist, you still benefit from the settler colonial project that took place. So the differential between the two is really thin. And at some level, it doesn't matter if you just got off the boat or you got off the boat 400 years ago. You really do owe something to that past, especially because the African American community and the Native American community are still around, and they've never had any type of meaningful redress. There's never been any mitigation. No, and because of trauma goes on from generation to generation, and then Native Americans have been isolated in reservations, which were prison camps, to be clear. Like this, they're not necessarily that anymore, obviously, but they definitely were. And so to not address that past, I think is really it's a terrible mistake, because it means nobody can heal. For the record, one state in the United States has attempted to address that past, and it's the Commonwealth of Virginia, which is amazing because, right, that's the first colony. That's where it all started. The year in my head is 2008, but I also have the year 2006. It was somewhere around there. The Republican-dominated legislature, because today it's a blue state, but in 2006, 2008, it was still red. It was purpling at that point. and the Republican governor passed legislation, and it was bipartisan. The Democrats helped draft it and voted for it. They passed legislation apologizing for the genocide of Native Americans and for African slavery. So the Commonwealth of Virginia has taken the brave step of actually making, right, 12-step program, you have to apologize. I mean, it's just that simple. And they started the process and then nobody followed through. So everybody kept saying, well, you'll get sued, you'll get sued. And I'm trying to see where the Commonwealth of Virginia is getting sued.
We are a very litigious culture as well.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you'll get sued for what? For apologizing? And the answer was they thought it would be admitting guilt.
Yes, that's we're also taught here, corporately, like, never, if you've done something wrong, never admit guilt. We see so many like horrific accidents here, and the obvious party responsible will never admit guilt. And it's, yeah. I feel like that would be such a huge way to just be like, hey, we're so sorry this happened. We made a mistake. That heals, that does so much healing. I don't think people fully appreciate what a sincere apology is, and seeking forgiveness, and just those sort of very human, like, we teach our kids this thing, like, hey, you hurt someone, like, you have to go and check on them and make sure that they're okay, and tell them that I didn't actually mean to hurt you, and that sort of thing. Because the otherwise, like, the implication that we root into our psyche is that, like, these people are trying to hurt us.
Yeah.
So if we repress that kind of generational trauma, which it seems like we have been doing because no one wants to face it, then it's very hard to heal from that.
You know how you're driving in Houston and there's 2 lanes and there's somebody turned left. So they've caused a traffic jam in the left-hand lane and you're in the right-hand lane. As you're approaching, you always slow down because there's always some jerk who will just come flying out of that lane to get in the right-hand lane. And one time, I'm going down and I'm slowing down because I know somebody's going to do it. And I pass them, and then the guy goes. So if he had just turned his head, he would have seen me, and he slammed into the driver's door on my car. And he hit me so hard, like, I don't know how he accelerated this fast. He broke his front right wheel. Like, it broke and went underneath. You're like, what the heck? So the cop comes, of course, and he writes the guy a ticket because it's so obvious he slammed into me. And he's the whole time going, I don't know where that guy came. He came out of nowhere. He must have been speeding. And then he was like, he hit me. And the cop's like, no, it's not. It's not. How you mean he went sideways? You're like, how is this possible? And he kept insisting to the insurance company that it was my fault, and his insurance company couldn't wait for it to be my fault. So they actually kept messing up my insurance claim. And, like, what did he get out of that? Because in the end, they had to pay. He just delayed it, and my ability to get a rental car is what it worked out to.
Sometimes just being
I feel like that's the United States.
The squeaky wheel works. From your perspective, Roy, what is the most meaningful way to understand or celebrate Thanksgiving today?
Well, for about, let's see how long, about 30 years I've been saying happy Thanksgiving. I don't know. So, like, I've made the attempt to just keep it as an opportunity to get together with people. There was a neighbor family that every year we would get together with them, and I'm a very political person, obviously, and I'm always the guy that likes to throw hand grenades in a room and then close the door and wait to see what happens. And so, I've often, in the past, I would use it as an opportunity to say something political as well. But I sort of got tired of doing that because I just felt like it wasn't going anywhere and it didn't do anything meaningful. And I think that screaming, shouting argument that you have with your irritating uncle who says obscene things doesn't help the world any either. So I don't know is my answer. One thing that you could do that I think is worth doing is doing research on Native American culture and figuring out what's there, and then to the extent to which you can, supporting Native American culture. So, for example, there was a law in the United States where, in the event of a criminal case, Native American police could handle it unless it was rape or murder. If it was rape or murder, it had to be handled by the FBI. Well, the FBI, which is supposedly, investigating terrorism and organized crime, doesn't really have the resources to investigate rape on a Native American reservation, and doesn't really want to investigate murder on a Native American reservation or have the resources to do it either. And so, as a general rule, the FBI just ignored those rape and murder cases. And the result has been that, rape on Native American reservations is through the roof. And then what happened was, when we updated VAWA, Violence Against Women Act, I don't remember the year, I want to say like 2012, but I'm sure I'm wrong. When we did the update, then we made it so that Native American police could investigate rape, but not murder. That was still the purview of the FBI. Well, then what ended up happening was the murder rate shot up because white people would go on the Native American reservations, murder or rape the Native American women, and then murder them because they knew the FBI wouldn't investigate the murder. And so they actually, by accident, VAWA ended up getting a bunch of Native American women killed. And then the Trump administration let VAWA lapse. And then the Biden administration brought it back. And so we're in this space where people could be writing letters to their members of Congress saying, we need to fix this. Let the Native American police investigate murder. Take this out of the FBI's jurisdiction, just so that it's a relief to the FBI, and then it gives Native Americans the ability to bring that violence, the rape, murder, violence rate down. There are Native American food restaurants. There's ways you can go to reservations and you can interact with people. They're human beings just like everybody else. We act like they're aliens from outer space, but my experience has always been, when I've interacted with Native Americans, is that they're warm, gracious people who welcome interaction with non-Native Americans. I was fortunate enough one time to experience Shalako on the Zuni reservation, and that was one of the most amazing things I've ever experienced. It was, I'm ADD, so at some level it was sending my ADD through the roof, but that's what I was loving it. Like I still think about it frequently. I got invited to go, and I went, and it just blew my mind. And I think one of the things that we can do by having contact with this population of people who live amongst us is, and engaging them and talking to them and learning culture, is that we kind of unerase them in the process. But I think the most important thing is somehow we have to figure out how to soul search, and that's never going to be easy, because it's, how do you reconcile this past? Like it's a painful, brutal event, a series of events. It isn't one event. It took centuries to unfold. The last battle with Native Americans was 1973. It's the Battle of Wounded Knee. Because, the massacre of Wounded Knee was 1890, but the battle was 1973. And so when you go to Wounded Knee, there's two monuments there. There's one for the battle and one for the massacre. And I think the American population doesn't realize how recent active genocide has been taking place. In the 1970s, there was a series of terrorist attacks across Native American reservations where, just as an example, the president of AIM, John Trudell, they blew up his wife and killed they blew up his house and killed his wife and two daughters in the 1970s when he was in Washington, D.C. meeting with the president. And, there was a deliberate terror wave going across Native American reservations. People were being disappeared, murdered. And that was just the 70s. That wasn't that long ago. That was actually really shockingly recent. And there's still violence being done to Native Americans as we speak. It's not completely done. And then there's the Native American schools. So Canada decided it was going to once and for all look for evidence of how brutal the Native American schools really were in Canada. And what they did was they dug up the grounds around them. They did an archaeological dig. And I think the number, I'm probably messing this up, but the number in my head was, I think they decided that 5,000 Native American children were murdered in the Canadian Indian schools. And if it was 5,000 in Canada, it's going to be a much bigger number in the United States. And in the Biden administration, under the Department of Interior, they began the process, but I'm sure, I haven't followed up, but I'm sure the Trump administration with an executive order stopped that. But, the Indian schools are a real mark against us that we also need to talk about. There's so much that needs to be talked about and needs to be brought into the mainstream. Yeah, I guess that's how I would celebrate Thanksgiving.
That is a very Roy Casagrande approach, but it's good. It's healthy. That's how we grow. That's how we change and become better people, I think, instead of just continuously covering it up and then going and buying something.
Like if I punch you in the face, at some point I'm going to have to come to you and say, look, Jeremy, I'm really sorry I punched you in the face. I don't know what I was thinking. Otherwise, it's going to ruin my relationship with you if we just ignore it.
And like you said, these are neighbors. And I think what better way to celebrate than to be with our neighbors, recognize them as fellow human beings and people, and sharing the same space as we are, and say, hey, what can I do for you, neighbor? It's one thing to have like that. You're talking about privilege in our past and stuff, because I don't know what my ancestors did. But I know that I'm as almost as white as you can get, and I do have a history of family that was, settlers and colonizers. But even though we were dirt poor, we still used the land that was taken from other people. So. I think it's a matter of perspective and perspective building and acknowledgement that people are people. And I think that's really hard for some folks. Yeah,
especially because, there's this whole set of stories about how this was meant to be. This was manifest destiny. This was God's will. This was God's country. There's all this rhetoric that we use and the strange thing is we're constantly reminded of the Native American population, if for no other reason, because of the names of the places, like Minnesota and Michigan and Texas, Oklahoma, like all these names are Tennessee. So many of the states are named after Native Americans. I'm still trying to figure out how the city of Miami is in Florida when the Miami were in Ohio, but I'm sure it makes sense somehow. There must be an explanation. There's a bunch of things like that too. I like the Wyoming were from the Great Lakes area. Oh, the Ute, who Utah is named after, they're in Colorado.
Sometimes we get confused when we're using names of places.
Yeah,
so,
when we're getting genocide.
Like the bird, the turkey,
turkey.
It's stuck with us today, and it's like, well, this doesn't make sense. Etymology is fun research; it always is. Yeah, or just idioms that we have. Oh man, what is it? It's interesting. These others and these people, and how manifest destiny. This is our God-given right. All of these different things, which, to be clear, these are all human justifications.
Yeah.
If you read, if these Christians would read the Bible, if they could read at the time, that's not what Jesus said.
Thou
I
shalt
think,
cross the Atlantic and
yes.
murder.
What is it? Did he say? What did he say? Love this, like loving your neighbor is second to loving God. That's what he said, right? He wasn't go and murder
Pretty
your
sure.
neighbor and take their land. Love your
He
enemies.
also
That's
said,
even. Yeah.
he also said the rich have as much chance of getting to heaven as a camel passing through the eye of a needle. Which makes me wonder what Bible the Calvinists were reading.
Right. Yeah. That's. I don't know if they understand that. The love of money is the root of all evil. Jesus said a lot of things that people don't ever think about.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just
It's so convenient.
The human justification for things. It's so fascinating. Yeah.
We are capable of bending anything to fit the
yeah.
shape that we want it to.
Especially if it comes to wealth, whether that's money, resources, land, owning people. Like we will justify it somehow or another.
Oh my God. It still kills me that the Quakers had slaves. You're against violence. That's right. How do you think that person became a slave? How did you make this leap that you went?
They volunteered.
They volunteered.
No, I don't think that happened ever.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Well, in a very real sense, we can be thankful for reconciliation, for our neighbors, for our friends, for having these types of conversations. Thankful for all of our YouTube watchers and podcast listeners. You all are part of this conversation with us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting us. These past over a decade, I've been recording Roy. We've been kind of having these conversations. This past year, we've started office hours and really getting into this sort of thing. So thank you for helping us and growing with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who supports us on Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you for that. We do
Coffee
see those.
is delicious.
Yes, we appreciate you guys. Thanks to Museum of the Future for hosting Roy in his talks. He had a good time hanging out in the nicer auditorium last time. So and you're on for a whole new series next year, right?
Yes.
Are we announcing that right now? You've got a whole.
I guess we just did.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can always edit that out, but yeah. So we've got more talks, steady talks coming up for 2026. And thanks to our family, thanks to our wives, our sons, everyone that supports us through being sick, and healing up and taking the time to talk to each other and to hang out with our audience.
When you said thanks to our family, I'm pretty sure I heard one of your children.
No, there's a cat at the door. And our fur family too. So yeah.
And our fur family.
My kids are at school right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Actually, no, it's Thanksgiving right now. We're not recording right on Thanksgiving. No,
Happy Thanksgiving.
So
more illusion.
We got a paper from school. My oldest son, they had like a little turkey in the middle and things that you're thankful for. And he's 4. He can't write yet, so the teacher was writing things, and it's really sweet. He's thankful for mommy and daddy and his brother, and some other things. And then the last thing, it just says Mexico. And it made me laugh so hard.
That is awesome.
So
has he been to Mexico?
No. So in his mind, Mexico means New Mexico, and that's where his grandparents are.
I see. That's fun.
We're gonna be in New Mexico to visit soon, and so it just made me laugh because his teacher has no idea. He's just saying, "I'm thankful for Mexico," and I love that because it's got people thinking here in Texas. Oh, I'm thankful for Mexico.
I love New Mexico. I'm with your kid. I'm thankful for New Mexico as well.
I'm thankful for you, Roy. I'm glad
Oh,
that
I'm
we've
thankful
been
for you, Jeremy.
friends. I'm glad that you happen to be one of my first teachers when I got out of the my professors when I got out of the Air Force, and got to spend time with you and get to know you. And somehow we're still doing this
Project.
thing.
Yeah,
It's insane to me.
it's so much fun.
It is fun. It is fun. All right, thanks everyone for being here today, and you will see the final Palestine episode soon. Promise. We will get that out. We've been taking a break from doing other things. A lot has happened, so we will kind of wrap that up and talk about how to think about those things. Roy, do you have anything else for our friends here?
No, that's it. I'm good.
All right. Thanks. Bye, everyone.